Welcome to Mission Majjhima. Ajahn?
Ajahn.
Ajahn, so tell us about Majjhima Nikaya 103, the Kinti Sutta.
So in this sutta, we find the Buddha asking the bhikkhus, what do you think about me? Kinti, what do you think about me? Do I teach the Dhamma for the sake of robes, alms food, lodging, or for being reborn in some kind of other existence? And the monks answer, no, you don't teach Dhamma for that. Why? Then the Buddha asks, do I teach? And they suggest you do it out of compassion. And the Buddha agrees, yes, I teach out of compassion. Then he goes on to teach the 37, what are called in later texts, the wings to awakening, the Bodhipakkhya Dhammas, which are the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the 4 factors of striving, the 4 bases of power, the 5 indriya, the 5, which are the faculties, the 5 powers, the 7 factors of awakening, and the 8-fold noble path. This is really the heart of his teaching. And then he says, knowing these, you should train together in mutual concord and agreement with one another. And he says, while you're dwelling in concord, it might come up that one faction or one group of monastics disagrees with another. This happens also outside of monastic context if people have disagreements. And the Buddha said to look at 2 things, the meaning or atta, A-T-T-H-A, and the bhyanjana, or the phrasing. And he says it might happen that a group, 4 different situations, that groups might disagree about the meaning and the phrasing, in which case they're worlds apart, or they might disagree about the meaning but agree on the phrasing, in which case they're talking past one another, or they might agree about the meaning but disagree about the phrasing, which is just splitting hairs, or they might agree about the meaning and agree about the phrasing, yet they're still in conflict, they still dispute, and that's they're on the same page, and yet still we find reasons to disagree with one another. And in each of these situations, the Buddha suggests that there be conflict intervention and intervention so as to create unity of view, certainly about these 37 wings to awakening. So you go to one party and then you go to the other and you speak to the monk who is easiest to speak to, suvacha, most reasonable is Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. And then you say to that monk, whatever the case, whether you're disagreeing about meaning and phrasing or agreeing and disagreeing in different ways, you go to one party and then you say, here's the situation. You agree or disagree to whatever extent it is about the meaning and the phrasing. And you say, tad amina petang, which means it's just this. It's just this much. Okay, you just disagree on the meaning and you disagree on the phrasing. You go to both parties and then you come back and say, thus you should train in what is Dhamma and what is Vinaya. And with regards to the third situation where monastics or groups disagree about the meaning but agree on the phrasing, i.e. They're just splitting hairs about things, then the Buddha suggests that you say to each party, it's just a mere trifle. The phrasing of things is not that important. Then the Buddha goes on to talk about ways of actually, if while you're training in concord, if it comes up that a monk has committed an offense, then you do a cost-benefit analysis of going to speak to that bhikkhu or not. And the Buddha gives 5 different scenarios, in which case the cost to oneself, it's troublesome or not. You do a cost-benefit of the other person, is going to be harmful, are they going to get angry? You assess, are they attached to their views and relinquish them with difficulty? And are they actually going to listen? And then you speak or don't speak in response to that. In the first 4 scenarios, regardless of how troublesome it is to oneself, how much harm or angry the other party might get, or how attached they are to their views, if it's possible that they would change their action, then you should speak. It's only in that 5th scenario where everything is difficult. It's hard for you. The other person doesn't want to hear it. They stick to their views and they won't change, that you don't underride equanimity. So a great lesson. So you should try to intervene if you can. The Buddha then continues, you're training in concord, and then friction, verbal friction comes up. You should remind the other party that, ask them, would the Buddha praise kind of this verbal friction in this disagreement? And they say, no, the Buddha wouldn't, kind of hearkening back to the simile of the saw, where the Buddha says, even if you're being sawed limb from limb by bandits, this is the simile. Someone who would give rise to a mind of ill will is not practicing the Buddha's teaching. So therefore, one corrects one's behavior and stops all the verbal friction. And then finally, the Buddha gives a way to hold all of this. If you're able to resolve the conflict, you don't exalt yourself and disparage others. And this is something you've spoken about before, Ajahn. So what about you, Ajahn? Do you have any thoughts about the suttas?
I think what I'd like to draw out of this sutta, before getting to that last part, which really is one of my favorite pieces of this discourse, or it's so meaningful, is first that the context is, this is occurring in Kusinara, or Kushinagar, where the Buddha passed away. And there's a sense that this is towards the end of his life, and he's kind of speaking to the bhikkhus about how to go forward once he's passed away, how to resolve conflict, how to operate in the absence of the teacher. And it's worth noting that, the Bodhipakkhya Dhamma, you referenced the 37 wings to awakening, in the Parinibbana Sutta, the kind of discourse so famous in Digha Nikaya 16, where that details his passing. So much of it details him going around the middle country of the Ganges River Valley, expounding to different groups the 37 wings to awakening. These are the core. So here you see him reference them once again. This is the core teaching which he really wanted to leave his community with. And it's worth learning. Ajahn Jeff has a wonderful book called The Wings to Awakening, this list. The element you mentioned where the bhikkhus fall into conflict, and it can be about the meaning, atta, or also means benefit, or phrasing, bhayanjana, which also means curry or side dish, which I like to know. So it's kind of the curry. The Buddha's saying, look, the phrasing is a mere trifle, which helps so much with us not getting caught in exactly how something's being said. And there is a sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, numerical 2.20, where the Buddha said, these things lead to the disappearance of the true Dhamma, misplaced meaning and misspoken words. So the phrasing, how the Buddha spoke, often it's very important, exactly the order of a list or the exact words he used. And so not to underestimate and to know what meaning was supposed to map onto the phrasing. It's an act of respect to really learn the words as the Buddha spoke them, and to take those, to hold them clearly. And there's an important point here of don't lose the essence. I loved how you pointed to, with admonishing or trying to bring another community member out of wrong view, how, if it causes anger, if it's troublesome, if they relinquish their view with difficulties, all these, and I think the quote in Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation is, the fact that I should be troubled or they should be angered is a mere trifle, but the fact that they can emerge from the unwholesome and enter the wholesome, this is of great benefit. And what a good, beautiful recollection for us. If we can help, then even if it's difficult, then there's something there. Then that's the priority, because as Kalyanamitta spiritual friends, this is what we want to bring to one another. I also love the Buddha's invocation of when people are training in concord, this, verbal friction arising, because it does, even if you're not being sawed limb by limb, limb from limb. But to note that he brings up hiriyottapa, conscience and concern, in a very particular way here, saying, not just would the teacher censure that. So basically invoking in his disciples, once he passes away, a way of referencing him. And we do this all the time with saying, what would Longpo Pasano do? WWLPPD. And, saying would, and the fact that he's kind of invoking this sense of ottapa, or hiriyottapa in people, and without giving up this quarreling, this one thing, is it possible to attain nibbana? And no, it's not. This fact that, if we're really devoted to the goal, can we give up quarreling? Can we keep a kind of really keen eye on that inclination in our own hearts and realize, that the importance of putting that aside? And finally, and this is the part you referenced at the end, how a bhikkhu who has resolved a dispute speaks about how that happened. If other bhikkhus come to him and say, "Oh, did you solve this?" Instead of saying, "Yeah, I came and I solved it," he says, the Blessed One taught the Dhamma. I heard the Dhamma. I went to this bhikkhus and I spoke the Dhamma. Having heard the Dhamma, those bhikkhus emerged from the unwholesome and entered the wholesome. And the fact that it's like ducking under, it's like Aikido, ducking under the praise and steering it all back to the Dhamma. And this is such useful advice for us. If you get praised, you can say, these teachings are amazing. Just duck under it and let it go straight back to what we owe all these wholesome qualities to, the Buddha's gift to us. Great sutta. Would you draw anything else out of this, Ajahn?
So just one kind of modern list are what are called the 4 indicators of conversational health. This was developed by Cortico, this media organization, along with MIT, and was actually adopted by Twitter. So conversational health can be measured by shared reality, shared attention, receptivity, and variety of opinion. So this sutta really kind of points to all of those, is that, are we share reality? Is the meaning, the atta, the same? Do we share this reality? Are we attending together? This is what you bring up to the person. Is there a variety of perspectives? Okay, allow it. If we're saying things differently, or even if we have a different meaning, it doesn't have to be a basis for conflict, and just being receptive, actually being able to hear the other person. So a useful kind of modern list.
So Ajahn, what is the word of the week?
The word of the week is Abhidhamma. Abhidhamma. In this sutta, and as you find this word in the Sutta Pitaka, just means regarding the Dhamma. That's how, or about the Dhamma. That's how Bhante Sujato translates it. And regarding the higher Dhamma is how Bhikkhu Bodhi translates it. The word, of course, takes on the meaning of this whole extra Pitaka, basket of the canon, along with the Vinaya in the suttas, of being this elaborated system of mental concomitants and consciousness explained in this very, very systematic way. But here in this sutta and elsewhere in the suttas, you just find it meaning about the Dhamma. So
it's a very big system when it gets put together later.
This is true.
Yeah. Well, we hope to see some of you in just a second on Zoom, and otherwise next week for Majjhima Nikaya 104. Ajahn.
Ajahn.